Well, I think it's time we finally talk about this thing. What is this thing? Well, if you don't already know, there will be a nice little video right here that you can click on, or a card that will appear right about now if you're on mobile, that will link you to the video I've already put out on this frickin' beast. Does anybody even use those card things? But for those of you still interested and not wanting to click away, this is the Nerf Hellsender, a double-barreled, double Mega Magnus shotgun, but it's on a single priming slide with a single trigger. It's a lot of fun. I've seen a lot of questions and comments about this thing, so we're gonna go over it in detail and show you exactly what I did and why I did that. Starting off with what the blaster actually is, and well, it's two Nerf Mega Magnuses. Magnuses? I have no idea, but it is two of those, but it is on a single priming slide with a single trigger, as I have already said. The blasters used are quite extensive, and not everyone figured out everything I have used. So we're going to start off with the most obvious, two Nerf Mega Magnuses. But for the priming slide up here, this is a Boomco Far Shot. But the handle was cut off right about here, and it was glued to the front right here. And this railing is actually the bow arms from the Boomco Flip Bow. And this is all epoxied onto a Lexan L shape that runs between both slides. You can kind of see it right there. If I look in, you can see the flat piece. That's Lexan, and then it dips down into this thing, and that's what creates our priming slide. Down below that on the bottom, you have a lot of space. I had to fill in gaps to kind of make it look good. It is open at the front, not that you'd ever really see that, but when you prime the thing back, it fits right in there, so it does fill that space in its own way. But you've got these side plates right here, which are the front of a Rebel Messenger. Behind that, you've got these kind of grip plates right here, which are the priming slide from the Spectre. You've got a long shot front gun foregrip for this nice little curved space right here. And then you've got a Boomco Far Shot rail from the actual priming slide glued in right here. And then of course the end of it, which is the trigger system, which is the Nerf Slingfire. Think that's just about everything. A lot of blasters gave themselves to be parts of this, and it turned out pretty well. It looked like a clown car before it was painted, but once it was painted, it came together rather nicely. The paint job a lot of people seem to like was something that I just did out of necessity. I still do functional paint jobs, but I had a little more fun with this one than normal. For those of you really interested in what I did, I just started off with sanding the entire blaster down, getting rid of all that digital camo stuff, and then I sprayed it down with adhesion promoter. Then I tried to spray paint it gray. That did not work at all. I used a Rust-Oleum 2X gray, and it failed miserably. I was rather upset about that, and Bobo and Rob from SB&C both told me to sand the blaster and restart. To that I say no! What I did is I took a white vinyl dye I had sitting around, and I did very light coats over the entire blaster to kind of act as a primer. I didn't want to have to use primer because I already hit it with adhesion promoter, but whatever. Then I just went over that with my colors. We used a flat black for a majority of the blaster there, and then a flat gray for the slides, and then of course the pump action right here. Once that was done though, it looked pretty boring, so I went over it with some dry brushing, some silver dry brushing, the silver being from a Gundam marker. I seem to be using those a lot recently. I was inspired to make this look like something from Doom, and that's where all this nice blood splatter comes from and the overall realistic tone of it. I didn't want to make it any bright colors, but I still wanted it to look like something that couldn't possibly exist. The blood splatter was a duplicolor vinyl dye red that I just shot into a little can and then flicked at the blaster itself, which gave it the whole demon blood splatter. Lots of imp blood on there. If I had some green, I would have used it for pinkies, but I didn't. I didn't have any green. It's not a color I use all that often, so we'll just leave it like this. And that covers up a lot of the mistakes that you would see in the painting, which, trust me, I make a lot of. I'm not very good at painting, and a lot of people like this, which made me happy. But at the same time, I know it's a terrible job, and I just did it to get it out there. And then finally, it was top coated with a Rust-Oleum 2X clear matte coat, which honestly I don't like that much. The Rust-Oleum 2X clear coat isn't matte enough for me. I really wish I could just use my Tamiya spray cans on it, but I need that for Gunpla, and I don't want to waste it on like a whole can, like a $7 can on this, so I make do with what I can. Maybe that's the reason why I don't like my paint jobs that much. And the problem with a lot of this is you look really closely at it, you can see where it's still, apparently the Rust-Oleum 2X takes 7 days to cure to plastic, which is ridiculous, and you can still see places in here where I gripped it back to prime it after I top coated it and it's still smudged with my finger hours later. And I even went at it with a heat gun and couldn't get it to work right. The best part about all of this is that with all of this mess on here kind of bringing the entire blaster together, you can't see some of the major damages that have already happened. For instance, I don't know how, but I came out here after I shot that video and my blaster was on the cement floor. And you can tell right here on this slide that it's been scuffed up. But since I started off with that white with the black, you can't really see the damage. It worked out really well for me. So any actual cuts and scrapes this thing gets, even though I went over it with 3 freaking layers of clear coat, it just adds to the blaster's damage and overall character. So cool, I'm happy about that. Now, internally, nothing was done. The Magnus is already a really, really powerful blaster to begin with, and the problem with this pump grip is that it takes a considerable amount of force to prime it. The hardest part of this entire blaster, after getting all of this stuff fit together, because it's really hard to see, but to get this handle centered perfectly in there, I had to build up all of this stuff. So I started off with the messenger pieces, fit them on the blaster until they just kind of sat there. I glued those in place. Then I put the 2 plates right here, and then I kind of sat the handle in between those, and that's what actually holds this handle to the rest of the blaster. All of this stuff is entirely important to the structural integrity of the blaster, and then I just filled in some gap space with this and this. It's all just random parts I had laying around. But the trigger system was very difficult. I already knew I wanted to use this end of the sling fire, but when it came down to actually configuring it, the problem I had is when you pull this trigger back, the piece itself pivots forward to release the catch, unlike every other blaster where you pull the trigger back and it just slides back like that. And then of course that releases, it presses something behind it that releases a catch. This worked exactly the opposite, so I had to transfer this pullback mechanism, because of course the Magnus triggers pull straight back. I had to convert that into a different type of force. So Hawkeye 007 and Zombona both told me that if I used one of the screw posts kind of like a pulley, I could make a lever system and divert that energy in a different direction. So I took the sling fire trigger and I drilled a hole in it and I ran some kind of like a twine based material. It's a string, but it's a nylon string. It's very, very durable. It doesn't unravel or anything like that. And I found this in the middle of a paracord bracelet. I have quite a few of them, and I decided to sacrifice one of them in order to get a little bit of that material, and it worked out great. So the original time I tried to get the trigger set up is I just had one string in the middle of a bolt that runs between both triggers, and then it runs over a screw post from the original sling fire, and then down into the hole I drilled on the sling fire trigger. If you pull the trigger fast, it will fire both every single time, but it's when you do that slow trigger that sometimes you only get one side to fire and you have to reset the trigger. The trigger itself doesn't have any kind of spring on it because there's not enough space for one, so you do have to kind of edge it back forward with your finger. If you don't do that and you just keep trying to pull on the trigger, it's not going to fire this right hand side. So even if you pull it slowly and you want to fire only one dart and you only get that one pop, like right now, just reset the trigger, pull it back, it's good to go. So it works as a double stage trigger either way, which is interesting. It's a happy accident. Much like the priming slide, when I built this thing, I wasn't planning on it fitting perfectly between both blasters, and that guides the entire priming slide, so I don't have to worry about anything else extra on it, which was nice, because I was gonna have to worry about making something that goes between both of these Magnus rails, and that just wasn't gonna happen. I'm too lazy to do something like that. Why didn't I build this thing more like a conventional shotgun? Maybe upside down and convert the triggers to go down here and have a stock and everything on it so I can prime this thing back and then load it like a typical shotgun underneath? While it can be done, it's kind of difficult to do if you're not looking at the magazine itself because you want to make sure everything's in there. The biggest reason is that every single time you prime this, I love how these big, bright gray slides come back. So when somebody's sitting there using this thing, it's like you can see the slides go back like that. It's very visually interesting, and it makes you a little more intimidated of the blaster, where if I just had it like this, I would have to cut the slides off because there's no way I would have room when it's primed for any kind of trigger or handle or anything like that. So I kept it like this, and if you want to do something like that, you certainly can. I have the entire design. You know, you'd have to make something your own, but hey, if you want to do something like that, the idea is there, especially if you just want to use this exact handle right here. You would just flip it upside down, cut these down, and rotate this handle, and it's the same thing, really. This was a very, very difficult blaster to make, but I'm very happy with how it turned out. It needs a little more TLC to get up there, but if I had to take it out right now and use it in a war, it certainly could do that. A lot of people asked if I sell my stuff or if I would sell something like this, and the answer is probably not. The main reason for that is, as I've just demonstrated, even though this thing works very well for me, it's not perfect. These mechanics, I'm just not smart enough to go at them in a logical way, so I have to try to think of backwards ideas and concepts that probably could be way easier to do for somebody else who just thought of something better. I try my hardest and I get by, but when you have something like the Sling WinRAR, when most people who pick it up can't prime it, but I can prime it every single time because I just felt it, I figured out how it works. That's not something I really feel like I could sell. It's not a product that you can just go out there and use effortlessly. I don't want to sell this thing to somebody and go, oh, there's this smudge right here on the paint, and the trigger doesn't work perfectly every single time because I'm not pulling it right. I don't want to deal with that. That's why I've never sold or taken commissions on anything I've ever done. Not that anybody who asks that kind of stuff's gonna watch this far into the video, but whatever. I am interested to know what you guys think about the Hellsender. Down in the comment boxes below, please let me know if there's anything you would have done differently or anything like a small change that might make this work a lot better. Or if you want to build one yourself, you can also let me know down there. Or if you think it's absolutely useless, yeah, you can let me know down there as well, and I'm sure you will. There's a like button and a dislike button for that exact reason. If you want to see two more things I've built, we've got the Divine Punishment over here, and we've also got the Sling WinRAR. These are two very, very difficult projects that I have succeeded at making in the past, and they definitely won't be the last, but where do we go from here? And of course, if you want to see what I'm going to come out with in the future, the easiest way to do that is to hit the subscribe button. That way, every single time I upload it, you know, it's right there, bam, you don't have to worry about anything. I'm Walcom S7, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in an entirely different one